All right, welcome back to episode 4 of the Schwab Sports Show. I think that's just going to be the name that I stick with. I think the triple S is going to look really good when I inevitably get the coolest logo of all time when I go ahead and make one, or if I just have ChatGPT do it. But SSS might be the way, might be the move going forward. But let's talk about week 4. Hit you guys last week with a lot of week 2 recaps. So this episode today, as I'm sure you've seen by the title, is going to be more so focused on predictions for week 4. And I'm so confident in all 15 because I'm recording this late Thursday night. So the Cardinals-Seahawks Thursday night game already happened. But for the other 15 games on the schedule, I'm so confident in my picks. I'm going to do like a $5 parlay for all the games and win me all the money in the world, and I can quit my job. But today, as I'm sure some of you already noticed, rocking the Jordan Clarkson graphic t-shirt. This is an unbelievable thrifting pull. Shout out my good buddy Jordan. Was showing me some of his favorite thrifting spots. Found this one, and you see a shirt like this, you have to buy it. You can't not, Had to buy it. I don't even remember how much money it was. Don't care. Had to buy it. But Cardinals Seahawks, I do want to start this by saying elite uniform matchup. The Sandstorm, I think there is the official term for it for the Cardinals, just looks really good. At first, it honestly kind of quick glance, I'm like, did they already get all their uniforms dirty? But no, that's obviously just the design of it because Arizona, we got them Haboobs. It looks good. Seahawks just always have good uniforms ever since like when you think back to like Beast Mode era, like early Marshawn Lynch days. Ever since they updated the jerseys, since then their jerseys have been great. So any game with a Seahawks jersey, they're going to be bringing heat. But what a weird game this was. The Seahawks offense looked great in the first half, and I'm really excited about Sam Darnold. I was a little skeptical of him because obviously didn't work out in New York, had a couple backup opportunities since then. Then he goes to Minnesota, and is he the guy, is he not? JJ goes down early in the preseason, so it has to be Sam. Sam obviously puts up damn near MVP caliber numbers, but it's is it a fluke with KOC, who I'll mention again later, but is turning into one of the best coaches in the league, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But was it a fluke year for Sam Darnold? And so far through 4 weeks for the Seahawks, I think no. He's just looked very surgical, and his passes pretty on point for the most part. He had a couple really tight window throws in tonight's game that were just super impressive. So I've really liked what I've seen from Sam Darnold so far to start with the Seahawks. And yeah, hopefully he's found a home for a few years at least. And he's doing some stuff now, and he obviously was last season with the Vikings as well. But he's doing some stuff that you're like, yeah, of course he was drafted top 5. He's a stud. At the end of the day, he has really good arm talent. He's a good enough athlete. As long as he stays protected, he's going to be able to make a lot of good throws, and that's what he's done so far. He did that all the time last year, and he's done it so far this year. Second half, though, for the Seahawks, their offense just was not as potent. They didn't get as much going, and I don't know if that's more so, should it be a knack on the Cardinals for having a slow starting defense, but then the Cardinals offense was a lot better in the second half. Obviously, they brought it all the way back and almost ended up winning the game. Shout out Amari DiMarcado for that last touchdown. And I'm sure Trey Benson and Kenneth Walker, anytime touchdown bettors, are rolling in their graves right now, seeing Charbonnet and DiMarcado score touchdowns. But overall, just a really weird game with the Cardinals, starting slow on offense, but then having a pretty good second half of offense. Seahawks having a really good first half of offense, and then having a slow second half. So I don't quite know what to think about it, but at the end of the day, we look at, if we look at the Chiefs last year, I'm pretty sure were undefeated in one-score games last season, and sometimes that's all it needs to be in the NFL. The Seahawks were able to squeak out a win, and they're 3-1 with the NFC right now, NFC best. that division is back to being probably the best all-around division in football, with the Cardinals sitting at 2-2, with how many winless teams we have so far and how many one-win teams we have. It's crazy that they're 2-2 and are dead last in their division. Everybody else is at least 2-1 or better. And of course, yes, Seahawks now 3-1. So really tough division. I think the Cardinals, my kind of like long-term thought for the Cardinals is that Jonathan Gannon is definitely the guy. I really like Gannon a lot. I think their defense is just overall really solid. They're just at the point right now where they've, gotten the new head coach. I know it's been a couple seasons now, but they've gotten the new head coach, and he kind of had to retool, rebuild the roster to kind of what he wants to mold it to be. And they're just still getting that talent. Calais Campbell, he's been awesome. This will probably end up being his last season, so really exciting to see that he is finishing it out with Arizona. But as soon as like Gannon starts really getting in his mold of players to mold this defense to what he wants it to be, I'm really excited for the future of this Cardinals defense. Again, it's just tough with the division that they play in right now. One of the big stories for the Cardinals this season so far, and of course happens tonight, is Marvin Harrison Jr. And he had a couple really bad he had one really bad drop last week. He had a second drop that a lot of people were also blaming him for, but it was a super contested catch in the end zone. Like that second one last week, I'm not as worried about. That first one is just a flat out mental error. Obviously the dude can catch footballs, right? He was drafted as the number 1 receiver in his class for a reason. One of the better Ohio State receivers we've seen in the last few years for a reason. Uber talented. It's all just a mental thing about, am I going to catch this ball? Is somebody going to hit me? Is nobody going to be there? Am I going to turn and run? What's the yak going to look like? Obviously, he probably doesn't say yak in his head right before he catches the ball, but you get what I'm saying. That was all just mental stuff for him. And then we see it start tonight, and you're like, oh, great. That first pick, Kyler had 2 picks in this game, and neither of them were his fault. Granted, he almost threw a third. That one was definitely his fault. He tried to fit it into too tight of a window, and Julian Love almost picked him off. So that would have been kind of funny to be like, two picks that did happen weren't really his fault, and then the one that didn't was his fault. I don't know. Funny to me. Nobody else might find that funny. But yeah, if you didn't see the game at all, the first pick that Kyler threw was kind of a deep crosser from Marvin, and Marvin kind of just stopped at the top of his route and didn't continue the route, and Kyler threw it to where Marvin would have been. Now, I think the ball may have sailed over Marvin's head if that was the position he was in. It may have been a little bit of an errant throw, but at the end of the day, Marvin just got to keep running that route right into the hands of Kobe Bryant, and then turns into just the weirdest play of the night, because Kobe Bryant, I think it was Tyke Smith that ended up like trying to block a Cardinals player, ends up running into Kobe Bryant and pops the ball out. Cardinals recover. So temporarily Seahawks ball. Cardinals get it back and proceed to not do anything the rest of the first half. The second pick that Kyler threw was, of course, one that was a slant thrown perfectly to Marvin, and he just ended up bobbling it a little bit. And I just realized I did the 6-7 thing. I can't believe I just did that involuntarily. But he bobbles it a little bit in his hands, goes right to the defender. Again, it's one of those age-old, like, when will some interceptions not be tracked as a quarterback stat? Because that one is clearly not on Kyler, but if you're just a box score watcher, you're going to see Kyler threw 2 picks. I think my hot take from this game is that I don't know if Kyler is the guy in Arizona. And, of course, for you guys that know me, I'm a big-time Colts fan, but I live in Arizona, born and raised here, so, like, I've always rooted for the Cardinals as well. Colts always my number 1, but I've always rooted for the Cardinals, and ever since Kyler's drafted, I've always wanted him to do well. And I thought he was obviously amazing in that season where they started 11-0, and he was, like, in MVP talks for a little bit. So I've always wanted it to pan out for him. But, like, these last couple seasons, I know he was coming off the ACL, but these last couple seasons I'm watching him, I'm like, I just don't know if this is the guy. He hasn't been making the strides I'd want him to make to be, like, the franchise guy. Like, that team can go win a Super Bowl with him. So it's tough because I don't think, and I'm not saying bench him for, like, Clayton Tooney or whoever their backup is right now, but in the offseason, I think depending on how the rest of the season goes, it's something that's going to be in the back of the Cardinals' mind. What do we do with Kyler? And I know they also signed him to a huge extension, so it's probably a cap hell to try to move him. But it's just, I don't know, it's looking a little bit more bleak. And it's like, it's tough because he's short. And I think talent-wise, like the stuff he does on the field is so impressive for a guy that's maybe, depending on how they scale Bryce Young, but is maybe the shortest starter in the league. And talent-wise, he's so impressive to me. But like almost every game now, I'm like, I don't know if he's the guy for Arizona. I've spent too long talking about Cardinals, Seahawks. So let's start getting into my predictions for this week. And yeah, just the look ahead for this weekend's upcoming games. So first game, we're in Dublin, Ireland. Going into this, recording this episode, I was like, do I try to do an Irish accent? No. It was a bad idea. I can't believe the idea even creeped into my head at all. So no Irish accent for me here. But Vikings Steelers, yet to be seen if I actually will be awake for it or if I just wait to watch the replay later. But the big key for this one is because J.J. McCarthy is probably still going to be out. Can Wentz deliver another strong performance? He obviously looked really good in when they played against the Bengals last week. So can he do that again when they put up like a 50 bomb? Can Isaiah Rodgers repeat what he did? I mean, holy hell. If you guys did not see this, Isaiah Rodgers ended with a 99.9 PFF grade for that game. Nobody has ever gotten a 99.9 for any position for any game ever. That was the first ever 99.9 PFF graded game by a single player in PFF history. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 2 forced fumbles. So he had, one of the touchdowns was a pick 6. His coverage grade was great. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers was the top 5 corners you can think of all time molded into one for that game against the Bengals. Jake Browning probably had nightmares of Isaiah Rodgers all this week, maybe even all next week as well. So Jake Browning, you are in my prayers. But this Vikings defense has just been really good to start the season. And if they're going to, again, KOC, man, I can't talk about enough how much I like KOC. He's getting into that Shanahan tier of like whatever quarterback's back there, it's just going to fucking work, right? He's, of course, JJ, I know he had a bad game against the Falcons. I'm not too worried about it because that was his second start as an NFL starter, regular season. So I'm not too worried about that one. But like JJ looked good week 1. He made Carson look good this week. Kirk Cousins obviously looked good a couple of years ago when his last season with Minnesota. Sam Darnold was like damn near an MVP candidate last year. So KOC, just whoever's back there at quarterback, just wins for the Vikings. And KOC is awesome. And depending on how they finish up, I really think he could probably win Coach of the Year. Like it's not a stretch at all. But the other team that's in this is the Steelers, of course. And one thing that just watching their film, I keep thinking about, as long as they protect Rodgers, as long as that offensive line holds up just enough, Rodgers will be just fine. He still has elite arm talent. I just do get a little bit nervous every time he has to scramble and get outside of the pocket. He's obviously most comfortable in the pocket with his, again, still elite arm talent. So can they protect Rodgers? DK Metcalf looks like a really strong wide receiver 1. I know he had a couple bad moments in his last year with Seattle, and people were starting to think like, has he fallen off? Is he washed? Anything like that? But he's had a couple pretty good weeks back to back now. So can he continue that really strong wide receiver 1 role that he's starting to maintain? And again, can they keep Rodgers from being hit too much? The Steelers defense, I think, is starting to worry me. It's just a lot of aging talent. Highsmith is approaching 30. Watt, I believe, is now 31. Maybe he's 30 on the dot. But Hayward is old. They have a lot of young guys that I am excited about. And then Jalen Ramsey, of course, is older. But like right now, the young guys that they do have, it's hard not to be excited about, like Joey Porter, Peyton Wilson, Derek Harmon. And again, they have solid young players. But right now, that defense just doesn't seem to be clicking. So I'm not going to bet against Mike Tomlin. I think for like the rest of the season outlook for the Steelers, do they end up just being 9-8 again or 8-9? Probably not 8-9. Maybe they go 8-1 again because Mike Tomlin refuses to go under 500. But are they just going to be in this never-ending like mid-cycle, this average cycle of where, oh hey, we went 9-8 again. Oh hey, we went 8-1 again. Maybe they go like 10-7. And then make the playoffs, lose, and then they're never in a position to get a super high draft pick. They're never in a position to draft quarterback if that's what they want to do. So it's just, how long are they going to have this mediocrity? But for that, give me a Vikings W. Again, I can't get over how much I love KOC as a coach, and he just keeps finding ways to win with whatever quarterback he has under center. So Vikings win. The next game, Browns-Lions. I honestly don't have too many notes for this one, just because, like, okay, if you had asked me this before last week's games, I'd say obviously Lions blow them out of the water. But then the Browns, who right now have the number one defense in terms of yards per game, they're only allowing 204 yards per game. That is nuts. That's insane that they're only allowing just about 200 yards. So they are the number one defense. Can they maintain this Lions offense at all? We saw what they did against the supposedly good Ravens defense, which, again, I'll talk about the Ravens a little bit later when we get to their game, but I don't know what the hell is happening with their defense, because last year, the second half of the season, they were the best overall defense in the league the second half of the season. Right now to start, they have been awful. Again, they did pretty good against the Browns. They did good against the Browns offense last week, but it's the Browns with Joe Flacco. Like, you can't expect too much. So I'm wondering when that Ravens offense ends up waking up. But again, back to Browns-Lions. It's just, at this point, with how bad the Browns offense is, it's just about how much can the defense limit the opposing team's offense. Can the Lions outscore? Can the Lions get anything going against this elite defense? I think they can. I think the win against the Ravens last week was the sign that we needed that. Yeah, losing Ben Johnson and losing Aaron Glenn obviously hurts, because those two guys so far have done, in my eyes, a good job with their new teams. And it's hard to replace guys like that. But both sides of the ball for the Lions looked really good last week against the Ravens. Sure, you let up, I believe 24 was the final of that one, 38-24. But Ravens offense that has averaged 37 points a game so far through 3 weeks, when you're only holding them to 24, you're doing a good job. So I do think the Lions end up winning this one, just because the Browns offense is so bad. So I have the Lions winning, and I kind of said this last week. I'm going to say it again this week. When do the Browns let either Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders take the reins? Now, again, that's not me saying I think either one of those guys is better. I'm just a big advocate for when your team is clearly out of playoff contention. Thank you, New York Giants. Obviously, I'll talk about you a little bit later. But when your team is most likely out of playoff contention, like the Browns are, because the offense is atrocious, why don't you just let one of the young guys you drafted go out there and see what you got? Maybe Dylan Gabriel goes out there and lights it up. Maybe Shedeur Sanders goes out there and lights it up. Maybe they both do great. Maybe they both stink. Who knows? We don't yet, because you're not playing them. You're letting 41-year-old Joe Flacco just go out there and chuck the pigskin around like he's playing backyard football at his family reunion. Now, I love Joe Flacco. I don't mean that as any sort of disrespect, because obviously I understand why they signed him. They wanted a veteran to take the reins of the offense while Deshaun Watson is still making his way back, which, fuck that guy. But you drafted two young guys for a reason. I think it's early. I know it's early in the season, but you've seen enough to know that the offense doesn't do much with Flacco. Give the young guys a chance. It will forever and always be something that pisses me off. So look for that to be a theme in my episodes, and I'm gonna probably rant about that every single week until they give the keys of the offense to either Dillon or Sanders. Next game, Chargers-Giants. Like I said, we would get to the Giants. I'm glad they're starting Jackson Dart because, again, they're in a pretty tough division. I think the Cowboys, as long as Dak is healthy, they're always going to find themselves, I think, in that wild card mix. But the Commanders and Eagles, obviously both coming off the NFC Championship, two really good teams. Cowboys, the third good enough team. Giants are just really bad, and I don't want to say it's necessarily like Russell Wilson's fault, because in week 2 against the really shitty Dallas defense, but Russ looked awesome in week 2. Weeks 1 and 3 didn't look good, so obviously they turn it over to Jackson Dart. Is it the best move to give it to Jackson Dart when he's about to go against Jesse Minter and the Chargers defense that has been really good so far, and I believe has only allowed 4 touchdowns, and they're 8th in total yards allowed right now. So Chargers defense has been overall a top 5 to 10 unit, and we know what Minter can be like with his blitz packages and his coverages, how sneaky he can be with his coverage packages. So I don't know if throwing Dart to the Wolves right now is the move. I think you probably could have just said, hey, Russ, we're going to let you against the really good Chargers defense right now. Dart, you got week 5, okay? Get ready for week 5. Start watching film. But, yeah, this one's going to be a Chargers win. Again, Chargers have just been a wagon so far. They're obviously 3-0. Shout out Madison Beer for turning Justin Herbert into an MVP candidate so far. If I had to pick an MVP right now, it's probably Herbert, just solely on the fact that Josh Allen. Now, I don't mean this as anything bad, because sometimes you don't have to do it all as a quarterback, but Josh Allen did have kind of a dud game against the New York Jets in week 2. He didn't have to do anything special because the rest of the team took care of business. So I'm not necessarily like saying that as a knock on him, but if I were to crown an MVP right now through 3 weeks, it's probably Justin Herbert. Just the consistency he's played at. He's not turning the ball over. He's just making unbelievable throws. I mean, that throw last week to Keenan Allen where he's breaking out of the sack in the pocket, rolls to his left, and has to turn his body to throw it to Keenan Allen for a touchdown. That throw was nuts. So, again, I think Jackson Dart, first NFL start, and I know he's played because they had a couple packages where he was doing some quarterback scrambling and whatever it was they were doing over there. I think, yeah, very clearly a Chargers win. I think the only thing that can maybe deter the Chargers from winning this game is if the Giants' defensive line can wake up. I talked about it last week, how good their defensive line can be with Sexy Dexy taking up the middle, Kayvon Thibodeau, who's looked really good so far, and then Brian Burns and Abdul Carter. Between those 4 guys, that needs to be a really good defensive front. Now, their pressure rate is fine. It's solid. You'd like it to be better, but they only have 8 sacks through 3 games, which, like, again, is very middle of the pack. But for those 4 guys that I mentioned, me personally, I just want a lot more productivity out of those 4 guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they can go about attacking Justin Herbert, especially with them having Joe Alt down at left tackle right now with Slater being out for the season. So I don't want to say excited for it, but I'm intrigued with what this Giants defensive line can do. And I've said it for 2 weeks now. I'm just waiting for that, waiting for it to click, you know? But Chargers win. Next game, Commanders-Falcons. Michael Penix. What the actual hell happened last week with the Panthers? He just looked awful. And throughout my episodes, as I do more and more of these, I'm going to talk a lot about quarterback development, because at the end of the day, that's like the biggest thing in the NFL, quarterback development. When you are Michael Penix, or because I'll talk about him kind of in the same light as well, but when you're Michael Penix or Bo Nix, and you are an older rookie like you are, or now I know they're in their second years now, but you know what I mean. But when you're an older rookie, because you stayed and played in college for 4, 5, maybe even 6 years with new COVID and NCAA eligibility rules, you're expected to be ready. You're expected to see all these different types of coverages and know how to break down film and everything like that. And Michael Penix last week looked like he was a 20-year-old rookie. Like he was a one and done in college and just didn't know what was really going on. And if you want me to be entirely honest, if we see that this week out of Jackson Dart, won't surprise me at all. Zero shock if Jackson Dart looks like what Michael Penix did last week against the Panthers. What's even more concerning is that it was against the Panthers. The Panthers, who have not had a great defense in the last couple years, and we're still kind of waiting for that offense to wake up a little bit more with Bryce Young now that they brought in Tet. So if we're looking at the offense, I'm not shocked. Sorry, I'm getting off track with a different team, I know. But I'm not really shocked with the Panthers scoring 30 points, but I'm more so shocked with the Falcons scoring fucking 0. Now, I know they missed a couple field goals, which, since it's not my team, it's funny because they had just let go of Younghoe Koo and the new kicker that apparently beat him out in practice for the starting kicker spot, ended up missing a couple field goals in the game, which, again, because it's not my team, it's funny. But Falcons fans, I would be so irritated. I would be so irritated. And if you are, I totally get it. So Falcons fans, you guys are in my thoughts and prayers. But yeah, Michael Penix, I need him to be, when they talk about goldfish memory, because goldfish, they only have a 10-second memory. He needs to have a goldfish memory about that one, because that is a game to never think about again. I thought a lot of people say like, "Oh, it's the play calling. It's Zach Robinson, who's their offensive coordinator. Oh, it's all on Zach Robinson." No, it's not. Penix he was off making bad decisions. I didn't like anything from what I saw from Penix last week, and they even brought in Kirk Cousins late because they just had to get him out of there, see if there was any light in the offense, to try to get some going late. The only things I can really talk about for the Commanders is that their offense still looked really good last week, even with no Jaden Daniels. So I think Cliff Kingsbury has kind of found his spot because obviously it didn't work out as the Cardinals head coach. There's some guys in the league that just aren't meant to be head coaches. They're just better off as a coordinator, and that's totally fine. Cliff Kingsbury is one of those guys, and it's working out really well for him right now in Washington, and honestly, I'm really happy for him because he just seems like a really nice, like, down-to-earth dude. If you guys watched Cardinals Hard Knocks from a couple seasons ago, I really like Cliff Kingsbury a lot, so I'm happy that it's working out for him as an OC. Mariota looked great last week. I know he had the long read option run that ended up in a fumble. He thought he was back in his Oregon Ducks uniform, but this offense looked totally fine with Mariota at the helm. So if Jaden Daniels, I think he did get upgraded to probable, I want to say. So I think it's trending in the right direction for Daniels to play this week. But if Daniels doesn't go, I think I'm totally fine with how Mariota looks in the offense because they are similar play styles. I know Jaden Daniels right now is the better talent and the better overall quarterback, but just play style wise, they are very similar. So I think the offense doesn't really lose a step with Mariota. Now, I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way and think that I'm saying the offense looks just as good with Mariota as it does with Daniels. No. The offense has a way higher ceiling with Daniels. They just are able to call the same plays and run the same schemes with Mariota. Give me the Commanders in that one. Next game, Eagles-Buccaneers. This might be like this might be game of the week. I don't think that's really too much of a stretch. I kind of wish they would flex this into primetime, but instead we are stuck with shit-ass Jets at Dolphins. I'm pretty sure that's the Sunday night game. That's kind of unacceptable to me. So I wish we could just flex Eagles at Buccaneers. But Eagles, a lot of people last week were talking about how boring the team looks because they're not really passing the ball much, and Jalen Hurts is just becoming like a check down merchant. And I'm sick of the Jalen Hurts slander because at the end of the day, dude wins. Dude wins games, and it might not always be the prettiest. I understand that, but it wins. There was actually a little bit of beef between Drew Brees and Jeff Saturday because Drew Brees said that they were just a boring brand of football, And Jeff Saturday said, well, winning isn't boring. I'm kind of in the middle there, but I think it's like a funny random beef that Drew Brees against Jeff Saturday, whatever. But I do get both sides, but we've now seen that when the offensive coordinator allows, Jalen Hurts looked really good passing beyond the sticks last week. They just have to spread the ball out more, not just congest it so much to where it's just short dinks and dunks and a lot of runs. And even if a few of those are quarterback design runs coming out of the backfield, but the offense looked a lot better when they start spreading it out. They ran A.J. Brown on I believe, 33% of his routes in the second half were go balls, and it was only like, I think, 9% in the first half. So as soon as they start spreading out that offense and letting Jalen Hurts rip it, they looked a lot better, and they came back and obviously won the game. Shout out Jordan Davis for the blocked field goal and then field goal return for 6. That is a thick 6 if I've ever seen one, so shout out to him for that. But the only thing I would say for the Eagles in this one is don't give the ball back to Baker Mayfield if there's like less than 2.5 minutes left. He now has 4 if you go back to last season's regular season finale. I couldn't think of the word for a second. But 4 in a row, if you're counting last season's regular season finale, fourth quarter comebacks. He's done it every week so far this season. And I think it would be hilarious if that's just how they win a 4th straight game. So that's really it for the Eagles. I think the Eagles do end up winning this game just with what we saw from the offense in the second half of the game against the Rams last week. They just let him command the offense a little bit more. They let him throw the ball, obviously deep, which he can do. He doesn't have an absolute cannon like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But what he can do is just his timing and his placement is elite. And it's hard. It's really hard for me to look past that. I hate all the Hurts slander. So if there are no Jalen Hurts truthers left in the world, I am dead. So yeah, give me the Eagles in that one. Next game, Panthers-Patriots. I hate to say it, but these are just two teams that are still kind of retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. Drake May, super impressive. I think he's turning into a top 12 quarterback in the league. He's top 5 in passing yards so far, and I really like what I've seen from him, and how could you not? The Panthers, I don't know if it's like a fluke game what they did against the Falcons last week to absolutely blank them. And again, I know I mentioned earlier that they had a couple missed field goals, so like if you really want to call it like a shutout, but at the end of the day, they scored 0 points, right? 0-0. So can the Panthers keep that momentum going into a Patriots team that's also kind of in the same spot where they're still rebuilding? They hopefully have their young quarterback of the future, but they're still rebuilding, retooling with a new head coach. But I'm going to go with the Patriots in this one. I think they've just proven a little bit more so far. I think last week's game for the Panthers and Falcons game was more so. Again, I hate to say it like this because I don't want it to seem like I'm belittling the win, but it was more so Falcons bad than Panthers good, if that kind of makes sense. So I'm going Patriots there. The next game is Saints-Bills. Let's see. I'm at about 33 minutes here in the recording. I'm gonna say Bills win. I know that's a shock to a lot of people. Bills winning against the Saints? Yeah, right, buddy. But no, give me the Bills. They obviously have Josh Allen. They have one of the most well-rounded teams in football. The Saints just are finding their groove. I think Rattler. I've been super impressed with what Rattler has done so far, with how bad the team is with a first-year head coach. And again, I do think highly of Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore, as long as they stick with him, I just hope it doesn't end up being a one-and-done season for Kellen Moore, because I think if you give him a quarterback, he's been a super successful OC the last few years. So just give him a quarterback he wants to develop, whether that's Rattler, whether that's Shuck, whether that's somebody they end up drafting, whoever that may be. Just give him a quarterback he wants to keep developing, and I think it'll pay itself out. I think it'll work out for them. But as of right now, they're one of the worst teams in football. They lost to the Mac Jones-led Niners last week. So give me the Bills, easy. And that breakdown was just about a minute, and I still can't even believe it was that long. Titans-Texans, next game up. Holy toilet bowl. Are you kidding me? These two teams are both pretty bad. And that's my elite analysis on that. It's just going to be the toilet bowl. The Texans offense has just been so boring. The shit that people are saying about the Eagles and how boring that offense is and it's just not fun football to watch. It could easily be said about the Texans because CJ Stroud has not looked good. The offensive line does not look good. The defense has been okay, but not nearly as good as you expected it to be with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter coming off the edge and Stingley being a lockdown corner and young safeties and Christian Harris and they have a good group on defense. And that's where you expect them to excel. If you had told me the story of the Browns right now, but didn't tell me it was the Browns, I could see it for the Texans. Really good defense, but maybe the offense is struggling a little bit. All right, I could see it because they have a middle to bottom tier offensive line trying to protect Stroud. And I can't believe where they're at right now as a team because honestly, and again, I'm a Colts fan. I'm always going to root for the Colts. But going into the season, I thought the Texans were the clear favorites for the AFC South, and I think a lot of people thought that too. So to see how bad they've been playing is kind of shocking, but I'll take it. I love it. I love seeing the Texans be bad. The other team, Titans, again, kind of similar in terms of what we've seen so far, although the expectations were wildly different. I feel like everybody kind of knew that the Titans would be, probably bottom 5 to 7 team, maybe even worse than that. But I will say I really do like what I've seen from Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward is honestly going to be a stud. And I just kind of hate that we have to play him 2 times a year. So I think Cam Ward is going to be really good. I like what I've seen. But Brian Callahan has to go. That guy stinks. I mentioned it last week. I think hiring him was the desperate hire. Callahan is just awful. Bad game management. And I think one thing that really stuck out to me is that last week after they got 40-pieced by the Colts, Michael Pittman was getting talked to by some reporters in the locker room, and he said that the players just didn't really seem ready. The Colts, again, and this is not me talking about the Colts because it's my team. It's just, this is what I saw on Twitter, that Michael Pittman was saying that their team wasn't really hyped up, and a lot of guys are kind of bouncing around to the pregame music and stuff like that on the field. They're just getting ready to play, and the Titans just weren't. And a lot of the Colts players were just saying felt like we were going to win just because they didn't really seem ready to play. Again, nobody was really getting hyped, bouncing around. So I think that's a coaching issue. I think that's a culture issue. And Brian Callahan has had a couple weird decisions so far. He passed on the play calling to their quarterbacks coach, which I don't know if that was something that the higher-ups told him to do. I don't know if that's something that he did on his own. But Callahan is not the guy. He needs to go. I don't think he'll be the first coach fired, just because I think when you have a rookie quarterback, at least give him the consistency of one coach for the year. That's how I think of it. Even though I do think Callahan deserves to probably be the first coach fired just because he's been that bad, I don't think he will be the first coach fired. But give me Texans to kind of get out of their slump here. Again, it's just mid versus mid, and I think the Texans are just a little bit better. So give me the Texans over the Titans there. Talked a lot about the Colts already. Who's surprised? But Colts versus Rams, I think this is where the Colts get their first loss of the season. Look, the Rams are an NFC contender to me. They obviously went toe-to-toe against the Eagles last week, and if it wasn't for the blocked field goal at the end of the game, the Rams are probably undefeated and giving the Eagles their first loss last week. So it's also really hard for me to bet against Sean McVay. I think he is probably the second best coach in the league. I still kind of give that crown right now to Andy Reid, just because of the Super Bowls, and the Chiefs every year have been good. I know they aren't out to a good start so far this season, but the track record is there for Andy Reid. Sean McVay, for me, is sole possession of the second best coach in the league. So I love, obviously, the McVay and the Stafford pairing, and the offensive weapons they've given him. The offensive line looks better. Their defense is phenomenal. Their pass rush is great. I just really love this Rams team. And I think, if you told me the Rams made it to the Super Bowl, I would not be surprised at all. There's a couple of the teams that obviously I would be surprised at, but Rams are not one of them. So I think the Colts' first loss does come here. I think people, though, because we've seen this comparison a lot so far, and I think especially if the Rams end up winning this game, I think a lot of people are going to say, see, they are just the last year's Saints. And I think that's just a really shitty comparison, because the Saints last year played against two really bad teams to start. It was the Panthers and the Cowboys, who Cowboys, again, didn't have a great defense last year, didn't have a great offense, and it was a shootout. That one was a shootout. It was a close game, but they edged out the win, and they beat up on the Panthers because last year, who didn't? But I don't think that Colts team is this year's Saints. And I don't remember if I mentioned it in last week's episode, but I thought if anybody was going to be closer to last year's Saints, it was the Cardinals. And I hate to say it because, again, they're like my second favorite team because I'm born and raised here. But the Cardinals were closer to last year's Saints than the Colts were. Started out 2-0, again, against two pretty bad teams, and now they're 2-2 after the Thursday night game against the Seahawks. So people are going to be quick with the comparison of last year's Saints, but the Colts just have a more fundamentally sound offense with how good Daniel Jones has been playing. They have a way better defense. They have a takeaway in every game so far, and I think they are going to end up winning this division just obviously based off of what we've seen. Nobody could have guessed that Daniel Jones would have looked this good going in, because it's like, how many quarterbacks have a year 7 turnaround? And this is where I will shout out Kevin O'Connell again, because holy shit. I mean, he did it with Sam Darnold, and now who looked awesome last year, and then they signed Daniel Jones as a backup because, of course, JJ was hurt for the whole year. And then Sam has gone on to the Seahawks and looked really good. Daniel has gone on to the Colts and looked really good so far. So it's just amazing what KOC has been able to do, and like, I don't know what it is he's doing. There needs to be some sort of study with what KOC is doing with his quarterbacks and telling his quarterbacks. Whatever it is, it's working. Maybe Carson Wentz goes out and ends up being a starter again somewhere next year. Like, that would just be insane. But the one thing in the back of my mind, as I watch the Colts get out to this really hot start, how bad is Anthony Richardson? And I'm gonna get emotional here. I might just get emotional here. I want Anthony Richardson to pan out so bad, because the potential is out of this world. Cannon of an arm, 6'5", 240 or 235. Obviously was the most athletic quarterback ever at the combine. Unreal physical attributes. But obviously it just hasn't been all put together yet. But if Daniel Jones can step in and look as good as he is, like, Daniel Jones is a legitimate MVP candidate. I'm seeing early MVP lists so far. Daniel Jones is not that far down the list. And that's just, it sounds insane, right? Because, again, I was a huge skeptic of Daniel Jones being on the Colts, period, let alone being the starter during the offseason. But he's made me eat my words, and he's, as of right now, turned into a top 5 to 7 MVP candidate. But it makes me wonder, how terrible is Anthony Richardson if Daniel Jones can step in and do this well? I think the Colts have said a lot about how they want to keep Anthony Richardson around. They've said no to trade calls and stuff like that. But you got to start wondering, like, my other side tangent, Shane Steichen for Coach of the Year. Because holy shit, because who would have expected this? I think everybody's surprise team right now probably is the Colts, because nobody expected them to be 3-0. Now, I understand some people are going to say, well, 2 of those opponents are really bad. I get it. But they beat the Broncos, who everybody said was going to have the best defense in the league, and they're taking care of business against the bad teams. Again, Dolphins look to be really bad, but we took care of business. Titans look to be really bad, took care of business, edged it out against the Broncos, which, however you feel about that last-minute call, whatever, win's a win. So, Steichen for Coach of the Year. I hope he stays, because I really, really do like Steichen a lot. But it makes me wonder that how bad is AR, and are his days with the Colts numbered? I mean, they have to be, right? If somebody else is going to step in and perform like this, and he had 16 or 17 chances to do so, I don't know. But give me the Rams. Going against my Colts feels weird. I always put a few dollars again on the on the opposing team as well. Because, like, hear me out. If I put $5 on the Rams to beat the Colts this week, I either paid $5 for my Colts to win, or I won money. Simple, easy, works every week. I promise you. You're either emotionally happy or financially happy. You're welcome. Next game, Jaguars-Niners. Two teams that are kind of surprised me in a good way. I kind of thought like the Niners would take a step down this year with starting the season with no Ayuk and just some injuries that, again, inevitably, because I don't know what it is that always hits the Niners, just always get this injury bug, but their defense had a few guys hurt to start, and they're 3-0. They're just finding ways to win. Granted, the two games that they won with Mac Jones have been against the Saints and the Cardinals, two not phenomenal teams, but 3-0 is 3-0. So really liked what the Niners have done, and Shanahan and KOC are starting to be talked about in the same breath. It seems like they can kind of just win with whoever's at quarterback. My prediction for this game, it kind of just depends on if Brock ends up playing. He actually did practice earlier today and I believe yesterday as well. So it sounds like he's tracking to play, but there hasn't, by the time of this recording, there has not been official word if he's going to play. So I don't know for certain. If Brock plays, give me the Niners. If he doesn't play and it's Mac Jones, give me the Jags. Brock Purdy is really good and way better than a lot of people give him credit for because he doesn't have the physical attributes of a Josh Allen, of a Lamar Jackson, of a Jalen Hurts, of a Indiana Jones, anybody like that. But what he does do so well is elite ball placement and elite timing. And wow, my voice has been cracking so bad tonight. I don't know what it is. But yeah, elite ball placement, elite timing, and he just doesn't really turn the ball over. So that's what makes Brock Purdy just so strong in this offense, because in a Shanahan coach team, that's all you really need. And that's what Mac Jones has been able to do so far through a couple weeks. So again, give me the Niners if Brock is playing. Jags if Mac is playing. I think the key for this game will be getting Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter more involved in the offense. Brian Thomas Jr. has had a little bit of some drops problems. So, like, again, is that just a little bit of what Marvin Harrison has right now with some, is it mental errors? Is it physical errors? I don't know, but I think that's going to be the key for the Jaguars winning this game, is getting those guys more involved on the offensive end, because Brian Thomas Jr. was phenomenal last year, and Travis Hunter obviously won the freaking Heisman. Get those guys the ball. Next game, Bears-Raiders. Shout out Caleb Williams. Another guy that just gets way too much hate. Way too much hate. He is super talented, and again, if we're just talking about like pure talent and potential, has the potential to be a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback in the league. He is somebody I'm super excited about. I think Ben Johnson is just the perfect pairing for him, because we saw what Ben Johnson, and again, I think I talked about this last episode too, but we saw what Ben Johnson can do with a quarterback like Jared Goff, who maybe doesn't have elite physical traits like a Caleb Williams does. But so to get Caleb Williams just playing more in structure when he needs to break out of structure, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at playing outside the pocket, out of structure. So just give it some time, Bears fans. I think they're going to be just fine. I really do like that pairing. The only thing I'm worried about is giving them a freaking running back. DeAndre Swift, he just doesn't have it anymore. I don't care if they need to give carries to Roschon Johnson. I don't care if they need to. And I was listening to the Bootleg podcast. Phenomenal watch if you guys are looking for another football podcast. But they talked about Dameon Pierce potentially as a trade target. They talked about Alvin Kamara if the Saints kind of start with a little bit of a fire sale. Just get somebody in that backfield to take off some of the pressure from Caleb, because right now it just can't be DeAndre Swift. The Raiders have really disappointed me recently. I say recently, it's only been 3 weeks. But in the last 3 weeks, yeah, they have really disappointed me. I thought this offense would look a lot better. I'm not worried about what Ashton Genty has been so far, just because, again, he's a rookie. He's still kind of getting used to like the game speed, the shitty blocking that the Raiders have. I do think, like, looking back on it, you have a top pick like they did. I'm like, yeah, why would you not take the Heisman runner-up, one of the best running back seasons we've seen in the last few years, and this guy who has unbelievable contact balance and speed and just kind of seems like the total package. He can catch out of the backfield. But yeah, total package of a running back. Like, yeah, let's get that guy. When the Raiders were see, again, another voice crack. These are just out of control. But it's probably just from yelling at the kids that I coach. But when you're the Raiders and you have the worst rushing attack in the league last year, it's a no-brainer to get Ashton Genty. But they have such a bad offensive line. Outside of Colton Miller, nobody on that offensive line is really doing much. So I think as soon as now, I think Ashton Genty will still have a really good rookie season because the talent is there. The yards after contact are still there. I know his total yards per game and yards per carry right now don't look great, but again, he doesn't really have. He has me out there blocking for him. So I think as soon as the offensive line kind of figures their shit out, Ashton Genty is going to be just fine. So as a whole, I'm not worried about the Ravens offense. Raiders, holy cow. That's the next game I'm previewing, which is why I accidentally said Ravens. But give me the Bears. I think they're just going to build off the momentum, similar to how we've seen the Lions do in the last couple seasons with that offense and Jared Goff just getting on a roll. I think we're going to see that with Caleb Williams. And then one thing I do want to mention, though, is how funny it is in hindsight about when the Texans and Bears played against each other in that primetime game, and C.J. Stroud goes up to Caleb and is like, hey, you got the whole world in front of you. Yeah, you got this, man. Yeah, you got this. Don't listen to anybody. You got this. And then since then, Caleb has a 27-5 touchdown to interception ratio, and C.J. Stroud is like 19-15 or something like that. So kind of crazy in hindsight that there's that much of a discrepancy seemingly in their play. And Caleb, again, has just been awesome, and I think he just gets way too much hate. Huge week last week, which I have him in one of my dynasty leagues, so could not have been happier. Funny enough, I actually have Stroud and Caleb in one of my dynasty leagues that you can start two quarterbacks. Those are my two starting quarterbacks. So CJ Stroud, for fantasy purposes, I need you to wake the fuck up. But give me the Bears in that one. I think they're just going to ride the momentum of what they did last week. So my next game, you know what? I guess I should say, because I have it written here, but I totally forgot to mention it, how funny it is that the Bears did that against Eberflus. That is like cherry on top. That Eberflus, who could not for the life of him seemingly help Caleb last year at all, and then Caleb absolutely lights it up against Eberflus. So that was hilarious to me. Next game, Ravens-Chiefs. Two teams that, would anybody have believed me if I said 3 weeks in the season they'd both be 1-2? Although I do think, like, Ravens, I don't know. It's just they've had tough schedules so far. Chiefs, obviously, like the Chargers, even going into this season, I thought the Chargers would be good because they were just, again, kind of building off the momentum of last season. I think Harbaugh's the right guy for them right now. Herbert, I've always thought was like a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the league. So, like, the signs were there for the Chargers to be good. Obviously, the Super Bowl rematch, Eagles are still the most complete team in football. So, 1-2 wouldn't have surprised me for the Chiefs. 1-2 more so surprises me for the Ravens, just because of how good that defense was to end last season. Like I mentioned earlier, they were the number 1 total defense the last 8 or 9 weeks of the season. So far, they've been absolute dog shit. So, can the Chiefs use this as their wake-up game? Because that's happened the last couple seasons, right? Where the Chiefs are like good, not great to start, and then like kind of halfway through the season, they have a game where it's just they have like their get right game. They need to like trademark that as their get right game. Could this be their get right game? So I'm super excited for this one because it just feels like, again, two teams that we kind of expected to be Super Bowl contenders mostly because of who they have at quarterback. But can they, like, who's going to bounce back better? Somebody has to win the game. If I said that and this game somehow ends in a tie, I'll freak out. But I just right now trust the backfield of Lamar and Derek a little bit more than what the offense looks like for the Chiefs. They have, I don't want to say like trust issues, but Patrick Mahomes just, I don't know if you really trust anybody right now outside of Tyquan Thornton, who granted has looked really good, but like Kelsey hasn't made all the plays you'd expect him to, and like Hollywood Brown is looking good, not great, and like Worthy's still out and Rashee Rice is still out. The running game has been atrocious. They like Patrick Mahomes leads the team in rushing yards at only 125, which for a quarterback is a lot, but for any other position through 3 weeks, it's not great. Pacheco, get going, dude. So I do like the Ravens in this one, but it's just interesting because it's like this could be the game that the Ravens defense turns it around and gets back to being that top unit we expect them to be, or this could be the game that the Chiefs offense turns it around and gets to the point where we expect them to be. But give me the Ravens on this one. Next game, I'm going to go Packers-Cowboys. Since I kind of accidentally said it, I'll just tell you guys right now, I'm going Packers. I think the Packers are a better all-around team than the Chicago Bears, and we saw what the Bears just did last week to the Matt Eberflus-led defense in Dallas. The Packers lost last week. I'm honestly not super worried about because, again, the Browns defense right now is unbelievable. They're the best defense in the league right this moment. So for the Packers to not look great against the best defense in the league doesn't bother me all that much. Jordan Love still looks great, obviously looked great in those first couple weeks. Their defense, again, still held the Browns to, 13 points? Just 9 times out of 10, you're going to win the game if you hold the other team to 13 points. This was the 1 out of 10 where they went up against an elite defense. So it's like what I put in my notes is I think that the Packers will light it up because it's like going from when you're playing Madden and you're in all Madden mode and then going to rookie mode. This Cowboys defense is bad. Now, it's possible that they get back Trevon Diggs and Deron Bland. Those guys started practicing, so it's possible that those guys are back. I don't know if that helps them right now. They probably need an elite edge rusher to put some pressure on the quarterback. So I think, like, if you look at a guy like Micah Parsons, I think they would really benefit from having a player like that on their team, just because right now they don't really have that kind of elite edge rusher. So maybe that's something they'll look for in the offseason, or maybe they can trade for a big-time edge rusher like a Micah Parsons, like a Myles Garrett. But the Cowboys just and it sucks because I am kind of a big Dak fan. Again, he's another guy to me that I think just gets too much hate for how good he really is. He's had a couple MVP caliber seasons now, and he was off to an MVP caliber start a couple seasons ago before he got hurt for the year. So I just really like Dak, and their offensive line is still really good. Javonte Williams has looked really good so far as the lead back behind that offensive line. So I do like what the offense can bring to the table. It's just that defense right now is so bad. And Jerry Jones is not making this team any better as far as I'm concerned. Jerry Jones, unfortunately, just needs to go. So give me the Packers. Jets, Dolphins. It's just another one of those games that I can't even believe I'm about to talk about. And I'm going to make this as quick as possible. And I have some good friends that are fans of both of these teams. I am so sorry that this is on primetime for people who are not fans of these teams. Again, 2 0-3 teams. Now, again, looking back at when the schedule makers are making this schedule, you don't assume that either one of these teams are going to be 0-3, honestly, because like the Jets are okay. Maybe you expect the Jets to be 0-3 because they've had a pretty rough schedule, but like the Dolphins, I don't think anybody expected them to be 0-3. I don't think anybody expected the Dolphins to be this bad. But I think this is where their season turns around a little bit. I think the Dolphins do win this game, mostly because I think Justin Fields is still going to be out. He's still in concussion protocol. They looked good enough last week with Tyrod. They just went against a better team in the Buccaneers. And I do just want to say shout out Aaron Glenn for potentially clip of the year. I mean, that, if you guys haven't seen that, check that shit out on Twitter, TikTok, whatever. But him doing his little dancey dance on the sidelines when they got that blocked kick return for a touchdown. Shout out Will McDonald. But that was just awesome to see. And I think for the future, I really like where this Jets team is headed. They obviously seem to have the correct culture and the correct guy leading that team in Aaron Glenn. I really like Aaron Glenn a lot. And he just seems like he's genuinely like happy and excited to be there, which I think is what you need for a team that's struggled as much as they have. I think they now have the longest playoff drought of any team in the NFL since their last playoff appearance. I want to say it was 2011, maybe 12. But I think they're heading in the right direction with Aaron Glenn. I don't know if Justin Fields is the starter for them or is like their franchise starter, but I think he's kind of the perfect bridge quarterback right now. Just somebody that can maintain the offense well enough. He had a really good week one against the Steelers, and he looked okay before getting hurt, but I think he's going to be good enough for them to just kind of hang around 500, maybe a couple games below. But I really like the Jets' future going forward with Aaron Glenn, but give me the Dolphins to get their first win of the season this week, which takes us to our last game of the weekend, I should say. Bengals-Broncos, and as you can see, I'm starting to slur my words. The Red Bull that I had a few hours ago is clearly starting to wear down a bit. But I think this is the game that the Broncos turn it around, because all in the offseason, a lot of people were talking about was that how good the Broncos defense was last year, and then they added a couple guys and just more continuity and more consistency with that side of the ball, and Bo Nix is going to take a step. I think this is the game where the Broncos defense finally kind of wakes up a little bit and becomes the top 5 to 10 unit that we expected from them. So I think this is the game that they do it against the Jake Browning-led Bengals, who got just worked against the Vikings last week. Well, I don't even remember what that final was, but the Vikings put up a 50 bomb. Are you kidding me? And again, Jake Browning, who's probably had Isaiah Rodgers in his nightmares all week, and now he has to go against Pat Surtain this week. So I don't know. Give me the Broncos. I like the Broncos as this. Again, I know I kind of talked about it for the Chiefs and the Ravens again. They're not two teams that we just haven't seen what we expected them to be so far. So I think this is kind of the Broncos get right game. So give me the Broncos in that one. And again, if you tail this parlay and it hits, you owe me half. I don't make the rules. I do not make the rules. The last thing I want to get to real quick, and I'm going to fly through this. My top 10 power rankings so far through 3 weeks. And I guess technically like 3.5, because I do have the Seahawks in there. Even though they've already played their week 4 game and nobody else has. But you know what? I actually think I might need to switch something. Anyway, all right, here we go. 10. I have the Buccaneers. Now, I understand that they're 3-0. I understand they're just all around a really good football team. What scares me is that they have been down in these games. I think what Baker Mayfield has been doing is phenomenal with the fourth quarter comebacks that he's had so far to get them back to 3-0. But I think I'm worried with the fact that they have found themselves down in the fourth quarter in every game. So again, yes, they're 3-0. We'll see where they really stand this week after the Eagles game. But for now, Buccaneers at 10. At 9, I have the Vikings. And before anybody says anything about, well, this team doesn't have as good of a record as the Buccaneers, but you have the Buccaneers in there at 10, and they're higher. I don't want to hear any shit like that. Another, I guess, kind of spoiler, I don't have the 49ers in here. I kind of just want to see what they look like back at full health when they get a lot of their guys back. And I know that Nick Bosa is now going to be out for the season with his ACL injury, so super unfortunate. But I kind of want to see what the Niners look like at full strength. So for right now, I don't have him in my top 10. But yeah, number 9 is going to be the Vikings for me. Again, I just really like what KOC has done, and the defense looks phenomenal. They put Jake Browning in hell, and they were a really good unit last year, and they have no signs of slowing down. So the Vikings are just a team that's really good, and they're winning with whoever's at quarterback right now. At 8, I have the Seahawks. They're similar to the Vikings for me, where they just have a really good offense. I like what we've seen from the offense so far. A couple really big games. And then the defense, I don't like that the Cardinals almost got a comeback win against them earlier tonight. But Seahawks right now is my number 8. Also, again, I know I'm only doing a top 10, but like the 7 through 10 are pretty interchangeable for me. So like if somebody in the comments is like, well, I'd have Buccaneers over Vikings. Sure, I'm not mad at that. My 7 though is going to be the Colts. Again, they're 3-0, and I understand the comparisons to last year's Saints. I just think they're better than that. And what speaks volumes to me is that they beat up on the teams they should have beat up on, and they beat a team that everybody thought was going to be like a top 10 Super Bowl contender this year. So they looked really good against the Broncos, and yeah, beat up against the teams that they're supposed to beat up. So I got Colts at 7. 6, I have the Rams. Again, Rams are like my second choice for NFC contender right now. They are just a tick behind the Eagles, Eagles best roster in football, top to bottom. And I just love the pairing between McVay and Stafford. And Stafford right now being able to throw to Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. It's just awesome. The defense has been really good so far. To see them go toe to toe against the Eagles last week was just a really good game to watch. So yeah, Rams at 6. 5, I have the Lions. Again, there's a gap for me between 1 through 6, gap 7 through 10. So I think there's a gap right now between the Rams and the Colts, which is why I have the Rams winning against the Colts this week. 5 and 6, though, for me, between the Rams and Lions are interchangeable. If you want to tell me you think Rams over Lions, I totally get it. But for right now, what we've seen from the Lions is they had a bad start against the Packers, who, shocker, I haven't said yet, really like the Packers. So I'm not surprised that the Lions had kind of a dud game. It was the first game with new coordinators because they lost Aaron Glenn and they lost Ben Johnson, but they've had 2 really nice bounce-back wins. So that's why I have Rams at 5. 4, I have the Chargers. Again, beat the Chiefs. They are just looking a lot better than everybody kind of thought they would be. The offense is clicking on all levels right now. Omarion Hampton finally had a good game. First couple weeks were just, of course, him being a rookie and getting used to game speed and all that, but he looked really good in week 3. Justin Herbert is having an MVP caliber season to start so far. So I like what the Chargers are about. So my 3, here's my top 3. I have the Packers. And I know they lost to the Browns. I get it. But again, I talked about it a bunch of times earlier in this episode that the Browns are the number 1 defense in the entire league right now. So I'm not super concerned with that their offense didn't look phenomenal. Their defense, the Packers defense, is still a really strong unit. And they still held the Browns to, 13 points? If I remember correctly, the final score of that one was 13-10. So they still held the Browns to just 13 points. 9 times out of 10, you win a game where you hold the other team to 13 points. So the defense is awesome. The offense, of course, had a bad game against the number 1 overall defense in the league. 2 really good weeks to start the season offensively. So I'm not worried about that loss. I still have them as my 3. My 2 is the Eagles. And I'll just go ahead and say it because process of elimination. My number 1 is going to be the Tennessee Titans. I hope that part in the video shows up. If you ever rewound a YouTube video and it shows you the most replayed part of a video, I hope that ends up being the most replayed part. My number 1 is obviously the Bills. But I'll talk about the Eagles. Again, they are the most talented roster from top to bottom in my eyes. They just have studs at every single position right now. It's more so about the play calling than anything. obviously they just won the Super Bowl last year. So they're the reigning Super Bowl champs for a reason. Most stacked roster in football. It just comes down to the play calling and what they let Hurts do. When they kind of cut him loose this past week and let him throw deep a little bit more, the offense started really gelling, moving the ball a lot more, and they just need to get A.J. Brown the ball more. They need to get Devonta Smith the ball more. They need to spread out that offense because it's going to clear up running lanes for Saquon. So I have Eagles at 2, Bills at 1. Again, Bills and Eagles, if you want to say Eagles at 1 and Bills at 2, I'm totally fine with that. Those, again, to kind of give you the quick recap, Bills, Eagles, Packers, Chargers. 5 is Lions, Rams, Colts, Seahawks, Vikings, Bucks. I feel really good about that top 10. I did think about the Ravens, even though they're 1 and 2. Their 2 losses are against really good teams, though. Two losses to teams that I have in my top 10. So I think Ravens are definitely in that 11 to 13 bubble for me right now. I would also have the Chiefs there because, again, they're in the same boat. I know they're 1 and 2, but their 2 losses are to teams that I have in my top 10, in my top 5. So Chiefs and Ravens are just outside of the top 10 for me right now. But the Bills and Eagles, interchangeable at 1 and 2. I'm just leaning Bills 1 right now just because they have MVP Josh Allen. But if you want to say Eagles at 1, that's fine. And then if you want to say Lions or Rams at 5, however you want to split those teams up, those are my 5 and 6. I feel comfortable there. And then, yeah, that 7 through 10 where it's Colts, Seahawks, Vikings, Bucks, any mixture of those 4 teams, I can feel okay about. I can get behind whether you think the Colts are just, again, last year's Saints and you want to put them at 10, and the Vikings or Buccaneers at 7, whichever way you want to put it, whichever way it splits up for you, I can get behind any of that reasoning. But yeah, to give you the full list one more time, Bills at 1, Eagles, Packers, Chargers, Lions, Rams, Colts, Seahawks, Vikings, Buccaneers. That is my top 10. That will conclude this video. I tried not to make this one as long as last video. I think it's just about the same length. So we'll see what happens when I end up editing a couple things out. But again, if you guys made it this far, I seriously appreciate you. We actually got, you know what, for a brand new YouTube channel, a pretty good amount of views on the last couple videos. So certainly can't be mad at that. Again, if you're still here, I appreciate you. If not, I hate you. But see you next week for another similar video like this. And hopefully the Colts prove me wrong and actually sneak out a win against the Rams. But nonetheless, I'll see you guys next week.